Hello everyone, welcome to Coding for Superhero session. It's me, Tabo, and this is gonna be officially my first web devlog since I've decided to go 3D with my website. So I'll be taking you through my development phase. So initially I thought that I would take the current existing site and just make it 3D, take some elements of it, make them interactive. So I started sketching, and through my sketches, this is how I build my ideas. This is how I kind of get my creative juices flowing. So this is what this process is about. And through this process, then a lot of ideas come through that I initially didn't have. So I just let it guide me up until I've got something that I can work with. I'm mixing Krita and Blender. So Krita is mainly for the sketching. And then I go to Blender once I've got an initial idea that I can start working on. So I started building this hallway with some lighting in it. So the idea was that this would be like a hall where I would just snap into different positions within this hall as a progression, right? Maybe on a mouse scroll, then I would go further into the hall, which would represent the different pages or something of that sort. So this is what I was doing. I built it out in Blender, got the lights working, and the plan is to take it to Threejs. Okay, so I finished doing it and then I exported it as a GLTF, and so this is what it looks like in Threejs. The initial point is just seeing the hall. You don't get to see the background, but just to kind of give you an idea what it looks like. I've got an orbit control, so that's initially what it looks like, but I also had to bump it up using emission so that I could get this kind of color, otherwise it was too dark. So that's just a test that I did. So far this is where I got. This is the initial idea where this would represent like the about page. So in this setup, you've got this VR projection box where I would have cubes that would be rotating. So this would look very similar. It's basically the same design that I've got, but only in 3D. So you could interact with the cubes and they would display different information according to how they were labeled. Like one would be for designer, for instance. One would be as a programmer, and then you would get information based on that. I also thought of animating the VR projection box just to make it look cool. So in my mind, basically I had a cool idea of how that would look, even with the projection figure. Like that would be maybe projected with a spotlight. But anyway, so this is just me roughing it all out, just to see how it looks just from the beginning. And then another idea that I had would be to have an icon that would have spheres hovering around it, but the spheres would only pop up when you hover over the icon. Okay, so if you hover with your mouse cursor, then you would have these spheres that would pop up, and each one of them would also represent the different pages, like the about page, the blog page, and my work page. So this is what this is meant to be, and it's also what inspired the post that I made with the lightning strike module, where I illustrated how that works. So I decided then to create a tutorial over it, because this was also my first time using lightning strike. So I just mainly used it because I had this idea of connecting these spheres with a line, and that kind of looked cool for a while. I don't know if I'm gonna actually use any of it now, but we will see. If I see a place where it fits, then it will still remain, but that's where that came from. And another idea that I had with these spheres was that you could also hover your mouse cursor over them, and they would also scale. There would be like an animation that would happen, but it doesn't really work so well because in Threejs it's kind of hard to target individual objects. How it works is not the same as with HTML elements, where you can just specifically target an HTML element, because you can just assign events just specifically to that. But because in Threejs you have a canvas, which is the main element, and then everything else, the way that you select object is not the same as with how you do it in HTML. So it's a bit tricky to get that to work. So I just decided to just scrap that because it's not really worth the energy. It's not something that is so cool that is worth me stressing over. So I just decided that's not the direction that I'm going to go in. So I also started importing some SVG graphics just to see what I can get. And this is what this whole thing, this is where this whole idea came from, really, like this rotation, but it's a bit funky. It's not meant to look like that. So I'm gonna scrap it. It's not gonna be included anywhere in the project. Okay, so now going back to Blender, I started doing more light tests. So I just created just simple scenes and then exporting them to Threejs to see what they're gonna look like. And this is kind of what I get. The lighting is always tricky. And then I went back to the drawing board, started making more sketches, and I started having ideas of using a floating platform. So you would have like an initial, like the main platform, which would have the Coding for Superheroes statue in the middle, which would be the logo, of course. So in terms of the design, that is still in development, but that's just the basic or rough idea. And you would have then sub-platforms which would be surrounding it. So it would be 3 platforms specifically, and you can have like stepping stones where you can then jump over to these different areas and explore them, where you would get then different information about myself and what I do. So it's just like a world where you can get to learn about this, everything that I've done, me as a designer, me as a person, me as a philosopher, me as a programmer, pretty much any information which would be interesting and which would be also relevant to what my website is supposed to represent. So this is the sketch so far. That's the idea that I've got. So this is what I will be building upon if I don't make any changes. And in terms of details, the details will be laid out as I go. But so far I like this idea better than where I first started. So I won't be going with the initial idea, which was to use the design that I kind of already have, because yes, in a way I think it's kind of lame, but I had to start somewhere. And so the next thing that I did was to do some light mapping tests, because I want to use light maps in my project so that I can have a cool looking scene which does not use up a lot of processing power, because lights and shadows are very costly. So if I use a light map, then I will save myself a lot of processing power, so that I can have a site that can run well on many devices, especially mobile and that sort of thing. So I started doing light map tests, and I learned a lot, because in the beginning it did not look the way that it was supposed to. It had a really funky look. It looked like the UVs were flipped, as you can see here. So I had to figure out why that was. So I did a lot of Googling to find out how to rectify that. And at first I thought it had something to do with the UV, so I was trying to figure out how can I assign it to the second set of UVs that you have to create. But then I got some useful information which mainly indicated that it's better to just assign your light map texture in Threejs. So what I had to do was to export it without the light map textures, and then only assign them in Threejs. But I have to create 2 UV sets, and the second UV set is where the light map will be used. And because Threejs is set up in a way that the light map, anything that you assign, any texture that you assign to your light map, it just automatically uses the second set of UVs. So that's what I had to do. So yeah, I had to do some minor adjustments, but learned a lot. So this is where I am at the moment, and I will just take it from there. But overall, so this was it. I will keep updating you, and yeah, till the next one, love and peace. I'm out.